Siamak Farah will now give his presentation on preparing for the new SaaS and cloud application markets. Siamak Farah is the CEO and founder of InfoStreet, a leading provider of cloud-based solutions. Siamak has been in the industry for more than 25 years, granting him extensive small business expertise as well as years of hands-on experience as a developer. Siamak has worked side by side with industry visionaries at Next Computer and Microstat.
Welcome to Business After Windows, a conference dedicated to understanding what business after Windows means and what's in store for the cloud in the next 3 to 5 years. My name is Siamak Farah, and I'm the founder and CEO of InfoStreet. We are a cloud app provider. So in order to understand what the next few years brings to the cloud, we need to go back through history. And as everything with the computing industry, we start with a green field. So in the beginning, the computer industry started roughly about 30, 40 years ago, and there were several root industries that took hold and they began to race to form where we are today. For instance, there was a hardware race, and there are some of these names that many of us who go years back brings very fond memories for us. But I'm going to quickly review them just to let you know how wide and far we've gone from it. There was the hobby and experimental use. There were people who were using personal computers, a zillion PCs, Apple Macintosh, and they were workstations and computers that formed, Silicon Graphics, Sun, Next, Hewlett Packard, and they were competing for the enterprise market. And then there were mini and microcomputers for the larger enterprise that were taking shape. So there was a lot of hardware going, and they all led to where we are today, that we even have computers today that don't even look like computers. Every one of your game consoles, your smart TVs, your copy machines even, they are mini computers who are by far more powerful than the computers that we used to use in the beginning of the computing age. But the race was not just for the desktop computers. There's also mobile computers that have come about. Everybody nowadays has smartphones. The majority of U.S. population have smartphones. Portable game consoles are there, ebook readers, and basically you are hearing more and more about smart glasses and smart watches and wearables, and these are all mobile-based hardware. And these all came from the hardware race to bring us to where we are today. However, that was not the only race. There was the network and connectivity race, and that was really interesting because of the fact of how fast and how magnificent of a growth that we have. In basically the 30 years, we have gone to something that was very slow into something that is mobile, very fast, and affordable. If we look at the bandwidth growth, some of us were old enough to remember those 300 baud noisy modems. We could look at that to the point that we are today with fiber optics, and even small businesses and households are getting as much as 500 megabits per second. And also the mobile bandwidth has grown as well. The GPRS, the 2G, 2.5G. We used to be excited for a 3G, and now we all complain when our phone doesn't show LTE and have 4G. And we could see that with the advent of newer and newer technologies, we're going to 1 gigabits per second. And this is becoming the norm, the expectation of how fast of a growth it is. The speed is no longer an option. It is something that every company who competes needs to have in place. There was also an operating system race that happened. Operating system was very, very prolific. You would think about underlying foundational software wouldn't be this prolific, but believe it or not, there are a variety. I just took a very small piece of what's in here to see, Windows and DOS, everybody knows about a variety of Unix and Linux, System 5, Next Step, BSD. They're all versions of Unix, Mac OS, iOS, which is sort of a child of Next Step. So you see there's a lot of prolific operating systems that have come about. And they have actually led to this software race because the software race created a bunch of separate but unequal software. And what I mean by separate is in the old days, you couldn't develop software for, let's say, a Macintosh and have it automatically work on Windows. And you couldn't develop for Unix and make sure it works on mainframe or anything like that. So they were separate. They were trying to grow in their own place, but they were really unequal. And whoever had the largest market share got the developers to develop in that operating system. So as you see, there was a ton of races. They sort of set the foundation to where we are. And if we fast forward to the 90s, we get to a very interesting phenomenon that of all these races, the winner was a combination of Windows and Intel machines. And as you can see in the 2005 time frame, we're having 96% of the market is going to be a Wintel computer, meaning a Windows operating system on an Intel-based machine. And then in 2012, of course, that's down to the 35%. So it's pretty clear that Windows won the race in those years. But the question is, why did it win the race? The why might be very interesting to understand, is that pragmatic people really don't root for the underdogs. The Wintel world was giant, everybody was banking on it, all the software developments were working on it, all the big corporations were working on it, and the rest of the world really looks smaller by comparison. In fact, the reason it was growing, it was because everybody was comfortable choosing Windows. In the old days, they used to say nobody gets fired by an IBM, and now there's nobody gets fired by choosing Windows. There was a ton of IT specialists around, and pretty much every software out there was written in Windows. And people were tolerant of the bugs in a Churchillian way. And everybody knows this famous quote by Churchill, and the idea here, how it parallels to our industry, was that people were saying, I understand that my Windows software is buggy and it doesn't work as well as it should, but really, is there anything else better out there? So people had their entire life in the PC, and every time the PC crashed, they would get a very stark reminder of how dependent they are. They would take 2 to 3 days to go ahead and restore it and bring it back to the same area it used to be. But to them, it was doubling down because they said, my whole environment is in here. I can't switch now. I can't switch it. And really, there is no other choice. That was the way that people behaved during that time. When you think about no other choice available, you also need to think about what does that really translate to us? Because we are people in the tech industry, we're people who are innovative and everything like that. And if you look at every single innovation, if people said, well, there's no other choice, I got to have to live with that, there would be no progress. 200 years ago was unfathomable that somebody would be, hearing somebody else's voice when they were 50 miles away or, a whole world away in the moon and everything like that. But that's now a reality. Even 20, 30 years ago, it was unfathomable that people would be, on an airplane and talking, or, with a cellular phone and talking on the phone, but now is a reality. So anything that seemed unreasonable has been conquered by the technical and the innovative person. So reasonable or not, we got very lucky and we fell upstairs and the answer landed right into our lap, and we got to a whole beautiful new world. And the best fruit of computing age is that internet is now available for everyone. It is the great democratizer. It really gives equal access to communication tools. Email is a killer app of our generation. For our children, probably chatting is, but nonetheless, this is all the internet and connectivity that is happening there. It gave equal access to information and content to people, notwithstanding all the net neutrality fiasco that is happening at this juncture. But for the most part, more people are getting more access to information and content than they ever used to be. It also gave equal access to market and customers. There was never a chance in 50 years ago for a small office running out of a garage to read the worldwide market. But nowadays, with e-commerce, SEO, and advertising, companies are managing to do so. And last but not least, it gave equal access to software delivery. Though today you could deliver software through the internet, basically have it be software as a service, be all in the cloud, and not have to create shrink wraps, not have to go talk to distributors that used to sell shelf area for people to see your shrink wrap software. And speaking of the cloud, the whole cloud has become a new terminology for people. In probably as recent as 5 or 6 years ago, people used to think about cloud as software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, hardware as a service. But nowadays, there's a dichotomy that the average person understands. And that dichotomy is that if it's on-premise and I look at that physical hardware, that is called on-premise. If I can't see that physical hardware, it's in the cloud. And that cloud has changed how we have how we live, how we work, how we do every single facet of our life is now affected by the cloud. For instance, cloud has revolutionized how we shop. Some 20 years ago, nobody would have even thought about buying shoes from an internet site because I have to go there, I have to make sure it fits me and it's the right thing for my look, for my feet. But nowadays, it's a very, very common occurrence for people to do so. In fact, so common so that 225 billion in 2012 was done through e-commerce. And the estimation is that in 3 years, it will be 434 billion, almost doubled. Cloud has also revolutionized how we consumed our entertainment, whether we watch movies, videos, listen to our music. It's all happening through the cloud. In fact, Netflix is one of the things that's growing very, very fast. The premium channel subscription as a result is dropping, and video on demand people are moving up. Of course, HBO is disputing these numbers, but these are the numbers that are really visible in everybody's household nowadays. Another thing that has been revolutionized by the cloud is how we socialize. The idea of networking has completely changed, especially for the younger generation. And if you look at that, how the growth of that has happened in the recent years, you could see that even in a span of 1 year, you could see the growth that, the number of adults, children are given, teenagers are given that they would adopt new technologies, but even the grown-ups, they have gone from up to 71%, and this is 2013 numbers. I'm sure that 2014 are substantially more aggressive than this. And you can see the number who are using any one of these social, and they're growing across the board. So cloud has totally affected how we socialize. But for us in business, and especially in small business, we need to think about how does cloud revolutionize how we work. There was a KPMG study basically roughly about a year ago in 2013, and they looked at every facet of a business. And if you look at these numbers, you will see that every single number here is roughly around 65 to 85% of the companies are going to either are in the cloud or are going to go have that function in the cloud. So you see across the board, from HR to finance to IT, everything is going to be cloud-based. It's no longer just a few functions within a company. Cloud has also changed how we access information, meaning the device that we talk to the information with. For instance, users have discovered the platform is completely irrelevant, and focus is what is accessed, no longer is how it's accessed. If you look back as January 2009, almost 100%, perhaps 99% of the information was accessed from a desktop computer, and we're down to 67% today. And in fact, in October was 67.2%. So it is quite a bit of a drop. But what we see is a huge rise in mobile and tablet and even game consoles. So how we access the internet has completely changed as well. Cisco put a very, very interesting slide up in terms of mobile computing. And it says that roughly 82% as of last year of the traffic was for mobile cloud. And that number will grow to 90% by 2018. That's an astonishing number, but it's also explained by the explosion of the smartphones and the explosion of the speed that we are accessing the internet with. However, this shows you that cloud is affecting how we access mobile as well. So we're basically going to the common recurring theme that the cloud is affecting everything that we do in a very, very massive way. Cloud, in particular in the work, has made a very, very interesting change that, it's pretty obvious to everybody that, you could do anytime, anywhere access. However, in the old days, people used to have strict policies that you have to have a certain kind of laptop with a certain kind of Windows operating system to work on in this office, if you will, and bring your own device was absolutely a taboo. But now that the cloud is there and many of the people are able to access applications through the browser, bring your own device is no longer a scary monster because of the fact that actually helps companies with having to do less support, and people are working in the more comfortable environment that they're used to, and they're actually more productive. So we have established that OS is irrelevant, device is irrelevant, and locations is irrelevant. So what is relevant? What's relevant is the user's personal environment. Users want their own environment. They want it to be permanent and secure. They want it to be independent of any device. They want to be able to look at it with their laptop, their desktop, their iPad, their Android, and see the same thing. And they want a world that is theirs, and they could customize it, configure it to their liking. That is the new way of doing work, where the cloud is your office, and people will go to the same environment regardless of their physical location, regardless of the physical device that they are connecting with, and they will be able to access their cloud application. So a lot of people ask, well, if it's not Windows, how do users see the world? How is it changed? What is the manifestation of this cloud as your office? Well, there are new desktops coming up all the time. For instance, Google has the browser, has made the browser into a desktop, if you will, and Sky Desktop put a desktop inside of a browser. And it's quite a tongue twister, but if I show you the pictures, you'll see. For instance, in the Google browser, you see the starting apps. It looks kind of like a desktop. You could click on icons. You could go to the next area. And in Sky Desktop, you could see that we have a browser-based desktop. This is all inside of a browser, but it looks like a traditional desktop with an icon, with a background that you could choose, with tabs of the applications that you have chosen. And these applications, you click on it, you don't have to sign in again because single sign-on is already connecting these applications. So it's truly your cloud workspace. So if you have a cloud-based desktop, you definitely need a cloud app market. And you see, for instance, the original iPhones and Androids, they were good, but once the app stores were there, they went to a whole new dimension because you do need apps for the environment that you're using. And you see the app stores are coming out. There's a Chrome Web Store, there's Sky App Market, Amazon, Apple, and more are coming every day. So how does this all affect the computing industry? When there's an evolution or a revolution, there is a void. And if you create a product that fills that void, and you also change your approach as to how you offer that product, you are presented with a fantastic opportunity. And I believe that we are at that stage in the game. People are always scared to change their approach. But the reality is people want to have a relationship with their app and not you. For instance, if you know every one of your clients that are using your application, that could only indicate that your company is too small and you have too little clients. You want the clients to have a relationship with the product and not with their salesperson. Another thing is people want fluidity between their apps. They don't want to have a CRM record in one place and then they have to go retype it in their address book and then have to have log into another site somewhere else and then basically import that with CSV file. We all used to do that and we're quite comfortable with it, but the new generation will definitely not put up with that. The important thing is the brand is everything. For instance, let's think about a watch. If nowadays you could tell time in your car, on your computer, down on the billboards in the street, on your watch. So as a result, the watches that people wear today have nothing to do with the idea of telling time is not the reason you chose them. The idea is the brand. Somebody likes a Rolex, somebody likes a Seiko, somebody likes a new Apple Watch or anything along those lines. So brand becomes much more important because once people are no longer locked in with a device or an operating system, the governing factor is the brand. No longer it is the operating system or the device. And any time that ever becomes unclear, think about the watch and think about how is one watch telling time any different than any other watch. Now all of them are atomic almost and showing the proper accurate time. And very controversial, especially for salespeople in the crowd who are listening, but sales is dead. When you are talking about going after small businesses and talking about $10 a month or $15 a month, it's no longer possible to put a suit on an airplane. It's not even possible to go ahead and have an outbound marketing people dialing for dollars to try to bring those customers in. The reality of it is the customer acquisition cost is going to be way too high and the company will not be able to make enough money at those kind of dollars. Yet they need to keep the prices down in order to get the masses and the volume. So the idea is that you need to create a product that kind of sells itself and stands by itself, and it is not based on some salesman's activity that the product is sold. So people want to be buying. They don't want to be sold. App markets are the best solution for that. That is probably one of the very few ways to automate sales. And this also changes the definition of a VAR, where they were value-added resellers. Now they are more focused on a given vertical where they could go ahead and create an aggregation of cloud applications that would work better for a vertical. And those are the more successful VARs that are going to be around. When we talked about the relationship with an app, it's a object, it's not a person, so it's a little bit harder, so I thought we should explain here. People need to be able to simply sign up. If sign up is difficult, people abandon the sign up process. If an app no longer addresses a need, people will abandon it because now it's so easy to change. They are not locked into it. And actually, they won't even sign up to begin with if they don't think that the needs are addressed. Apps have to be very easy to use and very personalizable. And people want to have a social sign-on. They don't want to remember 42 passwords, and they would like to log in with their Twitter login or Facebook login. And basically single sign on one place and use all the apps. So these all may seem little one by one, but as an aggregate, they make the world a lot easier for a given user, and users definitely give preferences to those things that make their life easier. So we talked about a little bit about past, where we are today. So what do users want next? So let's discuss. Users want less things to do. They want it to just work. It's as simple as that. They want it to automatically know what their next steps are to automatically automate as much as you can. And you see a few apps that are doing that so well, and they're becoming so popular and growing so fast. And people are talking about it with religious fervor. And they also don't want to be worried about things. Security is something that we always talk about, but it's assumed. Everybody assumes that it's going to work. They want to have all the control, but they don't want to have the effort that it takes to make things secure and work. So they want it to just work, less things to worry about, more control. They want to be able to access it anywhere, anytime, on any device. And they want the next killer app. And we already alluded to this a little while back, but for our generation, the killer app was email, and for all practical purposes, it still is. However, the teenagers of today don't even check email. Sometimes I have to text my kids to say, go check your email because I sent something from this high school or that university to you. And the next killer app is yet to be defined. So if this all reminds you of your teenager, you are on the right track. They are the next generation of users. They want things to just work. They want things to not take a lot of effort. The old adage is most teenagers are lazy. No, it's just the way the information works is they're not lazy. They just want things to work. They just want it to happen automatically. And more users are going to be having the same request. So users want that, but what will they end up seeing? We will see a fierce competition on providing users with better bandwidth. The same way as we think of 300 baud today and we chuckle and we think is ridiculous, there's going to be probably in the 10, 15 years, somebody's going to laugh at us because we thought we were very, very, avant-garde by having a 10 megabits a second download on our phone or on our cable modem. There are going to be sociological changes. In fact, part of this conference, there are going to be several talks about these things, how K through 12 works, how people work, how networking works, how social interaction works. These are all going to be changed and governed by the cloud. And computers like wearables are going to become more and more common, and it's going to seem very ridiculous that people like me are carrying big laptops around places, even though there's phones that they could use and everything like that. So as you saw, for a while the phones were getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but now with the Samsung and Apple 6 Plus, you would see that phones are getting bigger and bigger, so people could get out of the business of carrying maybe an iPad or a laptop and use their phone as their computer. Wearables such as watches and glasses will also expand quite a bit. Internet of Things is something that has been talked about a lot, but we are really in sort of the mid-ground, maybe even towards the infancy of it. And as you see by this graph from SRI, that right now in the 2015 2014 timeframe, we are still quite a bit away from where we are going to see the Internet of Things go. But as the Internet of Things happen, two other areas of industry will absolutely grow. One is security of things, that if your television is telling people, what programs you watch to be able to customize it better for you, well, that's a point where somebody could get in and get to your Wi-Fi and perhaps get into your network. Or privacy of things. You now need to have a area where you would go ahead and set up your privacy for your Facebook, your privacy for your television, your privacy for your fridge, and so there's a whole industry that's going to be built upon these two areas. And of course, we talked about it, the next killer app will come there and it will govern our lives. So for Q&A, please go to the link on the presentation here, and you can enter your questions there and also view other people's questions, upvote them, and the questions with the most vote they would get addressed on 9 a.m. on November 11th. Thank you very, very much. Once Once again, I'm Siamak Farah, and you could reach me at www.infostreet.com or @farah at Twitter.